Whenever you're ready.
Yeah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. سبحان Allah, for a reason.
So guys, if you guys want to join the halaqah, feel free to move forward, inshallah. So if people have space in the back to pray.
For a reason, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala planned for me to be here. And they told me there is a Dawah Workshop. So inshallah, it's good, just to know the fundamentals. When it comes to talking to non-Muslims in general, especially as the Islamic Awareness Week is approaching, right? It's this quarter, right?
Yes.
Okay. First, when it comes to da'wah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. When it comes to the job or the duty, I would say, of da'wah or calling for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that there's nothing better than a person who act and say, basically he act on what he says. مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ. He called for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا. And he did based on what he believed, meaning he called for the sake of Allah. وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي. And he said, I am from al-Muslimin. Alhamdulillah, I see a few brothers here and sisters. When it comes, subhanAllah, to this, again, to this duty or to this work, it's the most honorable work or job or duty that you would ever have. Why? Because it's the job of our role models. Of who? Of the prophets, alayhim salatu wassalam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose specific people to spread his word. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose the prophets, alayhim salatu wassalam. Why? Because of a lot of factors. But I want to focus today on one main thing, especially that this thing was embedded in the Prophet Muhammad's personality. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose us in this dark world to call for his sake. And there's nothing honorable than this. Since we have only 1 hour, I want to inshallah make it very short. Calling for Tawheed or Islam doesn't need studying too much. We've heard in the Quran a lot of stories. For example, in Surah Yasin, one of the guys who was named Habib al-Najjar, he just called his people to believe on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to leave shirk. And he was killed after that, right after he said this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with the Jannah, the same Jannah that he blessed to the companions or the people, or to Nuh alayhi salam, right? Who spent 950 years calling for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 950 years. Fine. Very important for all of us to deliver the message. Let's look in the life of the Prophet Muhammad. When he was sent to his people, at what age? 40 years. He was illiterate, meaning there were people in Quraysh that knew more than him how to read and write. When it comes to physical strength or like the body shape, there were people that looked stronger than him. But why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose the Prophet Muhammad specifically? Because of his manners, because of his akhlaq. Akhlaq and manners is very, very important to deliver the message. Now, when it comes to talking to non-Muslims, wallahi, we live in a very dark world. We have a blessing. Sometimes us as Muslims, we don't even think about it. We don't even know the importance and how it does weigh this, like how this value or how this blessing of Islam, subhanAllah, how much is important, because it's the path of life. It tells you where you came from and where are you going to. It answers the existential questions that every one of us have. Now, starting with, I want to highlight again about the importance of this and the effort that you put. Wallahi, that there's no one who does this effort for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after Allah chose him, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless him in this dunya and the akhirah. And this is not me. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Allah promised those who did for his sake that he's gonna guide them to his path. Success in dunya and akhirah. Now, some people, they enter the field of da'wah because they want to convert people to Islam. And I always want to highlight that's, especially when calling to non-Muslims, that's not the aim of it. The aim of it is to do the effort. لن تهدي من أحببت إنك لن تهدي من أحببت ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء. You can't guide who you ever want. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one, when He finds in a heart of a person or a servant that he wants guidance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him guidance. Nuh alayhi salam. No one can convince me that there is a better person than Nuh alayhi salam to give da'wah to non-Muslims. He spent 950 years calling for the sake of Allah. وَمَا آمَنَ مَعَهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ. Only very few people believed in his message. Very few. After calling for the sake of 950. Right. Comparative religion in general, it's a path of knowledge by itself. And it's a curriculum in universities where people go and study. Okay? So how you major biology, engineering, whatever, there's something called comparative religion, where people with specialty, okay, study this type of education or knowledge, right? This professionals. That's why you're not supposed, as a Muslim who's now in UCSD, to know the answers of all the questions that you might be asked. Because some people, subhanAllah, look, when it comes to people debating or asking about Islam, some people are sincere that they want to know about Islam. But others, they just want to throw misconceptions and basically make you struggle, right? And basically confuse you, put you in confusion, okay? It's very important to understand that you know this amount, which is enough to carry the message, but there are people of specialization that we, or books that we can refer them to, like let's say you're in the library walk and someone throws a misconception, like related to philosophy, related to anything. It's very important to tell him, look, I mean, I'm like you see as a student, but I can refer you to a person who knows, or to a YouTube video, or to by a famous scholar, or people who are specialized in this field. So don't ever try to answer a question that you don't know the answer of, because subhanAllah, you're going to hurt Islam more than benefiting it. If you might try, but speaking the reality is very, very important. Now, I believe that, mashallah, all of you are very smart and you're qualified to give the fundamentals. And wallahi, with these small words, that inshallah there's a small strategy that we're going to talk about today, just small strategy, which make the person's brain kind of rotates and go back to his nature, because we're all born on the fitrah, and our nature, like the Prophet Muhammad said, that a child is born on al-fitrah, he's born Muslim. And it's very important also to mention how and why. Everyone is born in Islam, but it's his parents who either make him Christian, who make him atheist, whatever, or like his environment. Why? Because Fir'aun, the one who said, I am the Lord, right? When the water took him, he believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So a person who goes to the airplane, for example, let's put a person who's this most like you can say most stubborn atheist, right? He doesn't believe in a creator. Put him in an airplane and then break the wing of this airplane. What's the first thing he's gonna do? He's gonna call for this one. He's gonna call for someone, right? To help. But who's that one? So a person who's gonna come to the library walk, he's gonna come, he will come to you and he has, a question. He might come with a misconception, and he might come that he just wants to know about Islam and he did not hear about it. So he would come to you, and he might just immediately bring up that question or misconception. Now here's the thing. Trying to answer this misconception is important. But you have to understand that your background and his background are very different. You and him, basically, are wearing a different lens. He's wearing a sunglasses, and you're wearing an eyeglasses, for example, or like purple lenses. You're not gonna see, no matter how you explain these to him, you're not on the same board, how they say. That's why, inshallah, the thing that I want to talk about is this strategy called Go Rock. Go Rock. And this is a very important strategy that each one of us, and it's very simple and straightforward, we should be using with our non-Muslim colleagues on campus, in library walk, and deliver the message based on this strategy. So, if he comes with that question that, okay, how would I know Islam is truth? And this is what happened to me last year. And always, subhanAllah, have the same experience. How would I know? There's like 900, there's like 9,000 religion. How would I know if Islam is the one that's on the truth? Right? How would I know that Islam itself is the truth? Why not another religion in the Far East? I'll tell him. I mean, the way to respond, you tell him, okay, look, I'm gonna first tell you what is Islam, and then I will answer you this question. Again, going back, I want you guys to come back to the strategy. Gorab. So what does Gorab say? Gorab is God. The G stands for God. The O stands for oneness, R, revelation, and A for M, prophecy or prophet. Okay? So first, you tell him, you might tell him quickly what does Islam is to submit to the one who created you. This is Islam, and tuslima, and yuslim al-mar'u badanahu wa ruhahu lillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is to submit your will, your past and your future for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you would start with a question. Let me ask you this question. Let's say I was, or you were, the only person inside a jungle or a desert. And suddenly you see a car, right? You're the first person to have ever seen this car. Okay? When you look into this car, is it possibly that this car doesn't have a designer? How possible is that? Like it just came with randomness or probability. Impossible. Impossible. If he's have some atheist background, he might tell you randomness. Well, just let him know. This car itself, it's a Tesla car. There is a factory. There is a designer. Okay. If you open the engine, I mean, Tesla has only a battery, right? Who's mechanical here? No one? No. Is it like computer? So this car, okay, has to have a design. So when it comes to our bodies, and I'm sure we have biologists here, when it comes to our bodies and the way our bodies function, you can bring some scientific, subhanAllah, miracle about the human body and how it functions. For example, they say if you bring all the veins, it can rotate the earth, and in one person, it can rotate the earth like 2 times or something like that. There's like a scientific. I mean, how would you collect this in one person? And the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala structured our body, it's impossible for this car not to have a designer. So how about us, about the universe, how the earth rotates around the sun, and the sun is moving too, and everything is basically وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَاهُ بِقَدْرٍ. Everything was created with a qadr. Okay? So then he would tell you, okay, I mean, there should be a designer for this car, right? Someone who designed it before, like, and throw it there before you saw it. And then this is the G, which is God. So there should be a designer for this universe, for ourselves, someone who created whatever we're saying. What's the next thing? One. You might just tell him. I mean, if you want to thought, if you're a little bit, have a little bit like knowledge in politics, you might just tell him, would you imagine that both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, both like very different mentalities and backgrounds, both of them having or being the president of the United States? I mean, is this possible? Or like having 2 different, for example, now, like, you know, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, they're both like, even people talk that they have very different mentalities in terms of they approach their business and stuff. Would you imagine that both of them are the CEO of one company? So what happened if we have more than one God? What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the Quran? لَعَلَى بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Like, you know, you can mention this, the Greek philosophy that says there's the God of earth and the God of sun and the God of heavens and the God. So if the God of heavens decided not to rain, what would happen to the God of earth? He will be gone. And that contradicts with the nature of God. A God is this supernatural power that created everything, that's the most complete, that's right. It does contradict. So there has to be a designer, so this is God, and he has to be one. So a normal person who literally wants to know about Islam, and he came with sincerity, he might start to think with you the things that you're saying makes sense. Let's go back to the car that we started with. So you're the first person who wants to use this car. Okay? Now, you're the first person, right? You open the car, you see the steering wheel, you see all the different parts. I mean, if you don't know what's the difference between the drive and the reverse, you might end up hitting a wall or hitting something, right? So if you're the first one to use this car, how would you use it? Who knows?
Read the instruction.
Exactly. See the instruction manual. The designer should leave a instruction manual inside the car for you to understand how to use it. Because agnostics usually, they would tell you, okay, we believed in a God or like a creator or a power that created the universe but left us. You would tell him this is true if the instruction manual is not true. And what is this life's instruction manual? Is the Quran. So we said God, G, God, O, oneness, R, revelation. And here you start talking about the Quran. That we just came to this dunya. And I want you to highlight on one thing when you talk to non-Muslims. Because subhanAllah, most of people convert to Islam, it's because of this, because of psychological distress and calamities and in general. SubhanAllah, they're very empty. I had a lot of, in my bachelor's and my master's, here and back home, a lot of friends who were from very different backgrounds. You see them living in they're suffering because there's no need for their life. That's why, brothers and sisters, wallahi, we are doing the mission that's going to make the people survive. So, you start talking about the Quran. It's only one book. If you go north, south, east, west, it's only one book. 114 chapters, 601, 602 or 601 pages, right? It's just the same. And now, if you can mention this, if you collect all the books from everywhere in the world, and you burn them, the only one that would survive is what? The Quran. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved it in the hearts of the people. And I always mention this. For example, I have a lot of family members back home, and even now there's people in San Diego that I have this family member that have only, it's my sister actually, she has between her and the Prophet Muhammad 31 names. From her scholar who gave her the certificate of Hafid up to the Prophet. So everyone, there's like specific, when you want to get a certificate from memorizing the Quran, you go under a certain examination, or I would say assessment, and then he can certify you. So this is the legacy of the preservation, that you can't find it anywhere else. And you can mention about the Quran how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this dunya and what is our goal in this life, right? And what are we doing here and where are we going? And what was things before creation. Now, just like bringing a misconception, some person would ask you, okay, I'm just like trying to be a little bit in the first two parts. And let's see, inshallah, let's make it interactive, both brothers and sisters. If someone asks you, okay, so you believe that this car has a design, okay? And this designer has another design. So we go all the way, you're saying, to God. So who created God? Anyone has any answer?
You can't ask this question because then you go back into infinity and nothing can be infinite. So logically, you have to have something be the beginning, independent of all dependency.
That's mashallah. That's mashallah. A good answer. Yunus?
You can reply back with another question. Say like, okay, you bake bread, right? So then who baked the baker?
Yeah.
And then you say it doesn't make sense because you're asking a question that's it's an incorrect question.
Exactly. This is the answer. Sorry, do you want to say something?
I'll say something else too. You could say that there has to be a starting point which was not created, it was already there on omnipotent being. Because you have to imagine if you had a box and I gave you a box, an empty one, make something spawn in this box. An empty box here, make something spawn in it. Impossible. They say, oh, but something clash in this. I give you an empty box and tell me. You won't be able to say like how. There has to be that one starting.
Exactly, prove his point. Any of the sisters wants to answer? Try. Okay, no worries. So I'm gonna answer this question with another question. Actually, I wanted to answer with two questions, but he got the second, mashallah, Yunus. But I'll do the first one. So let's say Mahdi, mashallah, in a few years, he got married. And then after that, he gave birth to a child, right? He had a child. So what is the probability that this child or this baby is a male or female? What would be an answer?
50-50.
50-50. Okay. Maybe if you go more into genetics, I'm not a person of biology, you might say 80-20. No matter what you answer, the question is wrong. Mahdi himself can give birth to a baby. Because he's a man, right? So it goes back with the nature. The question itself is wrong. Okay? You can say, as Yunus said, the baker baked bread. Who baked the baker? So he is the creator. That's why a lot of these people would try to put you in the box that you will never escape. So the answer would be, as we said, it's the question itself. You can't ask a wrong question. The question has to be something right. So he is the one who created our minds. He is the one who created us. And now a lot of people might just throw another questions. And this is actually what happened throughout the Islamic history, where we had philosophy was in its peak in general in the Eastern world, because subhanAllah, when the Persians were the Persian Empire and the Western also, they both, subhanAllah, immersed in Islam, there were a lot of philosophers. And they were very influenced by philosophy, the Greek philosophy and stuff. So they tried to take Islam from this perspective. It's like you want to make your mind think of things that sometimes, subhanAllah, your brain can do it. For example, there was a student of knowledge with his scholar. The student of knowledge asked his scholar, very simple question. Would it be possible for me to just, and he was very young, to just imagine how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looked like? I mean, the scholar did not reply to him, Astaghfirullah, no, we can't ask. No. He replied to him in a very smart way. He told him, the people who preserved the Quran preserved with it also the prophetic teaching. So we know from the Prophet Muhammad that when Jibreel first appeared to him, he had 600 wings, and each wing covering east and west. Would you ever imagine a bird with 3 wings? It's kind of impossible. And this bird, no matter how you try to draw it, might not fly. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you this brain. And this brain, a lot of scholars, they say, it's based, like the way we expect things or we make our judgments is based on our senses. If you bring someone who's blind and you tell him red or clouds, he won't know that, right? It's gonna be very hard for him to know that because he have never seen this. So his mind can't get the images from his eyes for him to expect things that are, again, more than the limit of his mind. Okay? So that definitely doesn't contradict with the idea that we, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, want us to discover more and be scientists and people who brothers or sisters who work with like NASA or stuff, no, to go explore. That doesn't contradict with that. But going back to the first thing is that I can basically put my mind as like the source of reality or everything. That's another topic. Because like if we have here computer engineers, if you have a desktop, right? that has a certain CPU, if I put more than what it could handle, right? If I put a lot of like, I want to solve a lot of stuff, right? At one point, it might more than its capacity. That's why throughout history we see people who were scholars of Islam, not even scholars, they were like thinkers. They literally deviated and they put themselves in, like, as Imam Juwayni said, they put themselves in oceans that they never got out. Okay? So moving on, we said G is for God, O is for oneness, R is for revelation. Now, and prophecy. Okay? So in terms of prophecy and the Prophet Muhammad, you can talk a lot, right? But the main thing is the Prophet Muhammad, and if you go back to the Quran, first he left with a big miracle, which is the Quran itself. And there's possibility of the Prophet Muhammad, either he, so for example, for sure he's Arab, right? So either he wrote the Quran, right? Or he did not write the Quran. The Quran was revelated from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or revealed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it comes to the first thing and the second, I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts the second chapter, Surah Al-Baqarah, in Alif Lam Mim, ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه. Alif Lam Mim, alaykum salam. ذلك الكتاب, this is the book where there is no doubt in it. هدى للمتقين, guidance for those who have taqwa and want and seeks guidance, right? Right. If you flip 2 pages, the last part, Allah said, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ, and if you are in doubt for what we have revealed to our Prophet Muhammad فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ, just bring one chapter. And what is the shortest chapter in the Quran?
Go through.
How many verses? 3. Allah debates all the Arabs. And we know how strong, I mean, why subhanAllah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose, when I talk Arabs, more the people in the peninsula, they were like the Bedouins there. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose, because, I mean, if you go to any other culture, right, if you go to Egypt, you might find the pyramids. You go to Greece, you might, or like Roman Europe, you might find the Roman Empire and the temples that they built. They were very strong in architecture. You go east, you might find certain things of like show their civilization. But the Bedouins had nothing. They were tents and their swords. There was nothing but their language. They were very attached and they were very strong in their literature. Okay? So going to the point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala debated for since 1,400 years, all the Arabs to bring something similar to the Quran. Did anyone or was anyone successful with this? No, at all. There's no way. It comes to the Quran that sometimes if you change one vowel, haraka, it ruins the whole meaning. It actually brings a contradictory meaning. For example, in Surah Bara'ah, Surah Al-Tawbah, Allah said, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بَرِيءٌ مِّنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ وَرَسُولُهُ. If you say, and I've seen people saying that, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بَرِيءٌ مِّنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ وَرَسُولِهِ instead of رَسُولُهُ, the first one means that Allah and the Prophet both are free from the non-believers or disbelievers. And the second say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from the Prophet and the disbelievers. Completely change the meaning. That's what Allah, and even if you go more and more and study, you would find there's no way that this Quran was written by a person. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. If it was from one different than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would see a lot of mistakes or confusions. And the Quran has no mistakes. It's very hard. Every book, I mean, if you go see any book, you might have in the first or second page an address, and basically writers say, if you noticed something wrong, just please contact us on this email or this address, whatever. Except the Quran starts with a debate. So this is very important for the prophecy, and you can mention other miracles that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had. From these simple words and this simple strategy, you might just bring him to think about Islam and what do we believe. Now he's going to ask you, what do you believe? What are the certain things that make you Muslim? So you can move. And before that, I want to highlight on one thing. A lot of brothers, I've seen it in the brothers, when they talk to non-Muslims, you first tell them, like, what's your background? Let's say he's Catholic or he's atheist, whatever, and you start attacking him. Look, no matter how he was ignorant and no matter how he was educated, you put him in a defensive place. He's gonna reply even if he knows it's the batil. I really want you or advise you not to do that. Don't, maybe later at the end, if you know some verses in the Bible that have contradictions, maybe. But just our mission is just to deliver what does Islam mean. We're not here to just debate and debate. No. We want people to be guided. We want to help him on his shaitan, not to help his shaitan on him. Okay? With a smiley face. And again, I go back to the manners. Prophet ﷺ had manners. That's why people believe in him, because يَسِّرُ وَلَا تُنَسِّرُ وَبَشِّرُ وَلَا تُنَفِّرُ. Make things easy, don't make things hard. وَبَشِّرُ, it's like be people with good news and mercy to others, not people who make people run away. Okay? And your manners are very important. I mean, if you have a friend in UCSD that you always like help and try to put people in general as a Muslim, especially with a non-Muslim, try to put them in a weak state where they have to pay you back. Try to help them in their exams. Try to help them, I mean, not cheating, but try to help them try not to lie in front of them. Try to be as much as you, because manners is the very important thing. Your akhlaq, your values. This is what is important. If you're a person who lies, who cares, who talks bad, who's not a good guy, no matter how you were in truth, they will not listen to you. And you're gonna be a person who hurts Islam more than a person who benefit the ummah. You're gonna be a burden on the ummah, not a carrier of this ummah. Okay? So going quickly, we're gonna take a couple minutes. Now going to what does Islam, I mean, what makes you Muslim? You can tell them that there are pillars of faith, pillars of Iman, and there are pillars of Islam. What's the difference? Who knows? What's the difference between the pillars of faith and the pillars of Iman and the pillars of Islam? Anyone, brothers or sisters?
Those 5 pillars is the regular which we're all used to, Hajj, fasting.
Islam.
Yeah. And the other one is.
I know, but what is the difference? So let's first count them. The pillars of Islam are 5. Yeah, you want to ask?
Islam is more like the ghaib and like what's not directly in front of you, what you're not acting upon. It's like what like belief in the prophets and like all the like the ghaib, not ghaib, but what you necessarily can't see. And then ihsan, or sorry, iman. There's just like belief in that Allah can see you, or that you can like visualize Him seeing you.
Yeah. So as the sister said, the pillars of iman are some things that are in the heart that you believe. Okay. Allah said in the Surah Al-Baqarah, first verses in this. Allah describes the believers. Who's the muttaqeen? الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Those who believe in the unseen. And what is the unseen? Al-imanu billah, to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He exists, the one that He's the creator. Al-imanu billahi wa malaikati, to believe in the angels, that He created angels from light. And subhanAllah, the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating the angels is a lot. There's a lot of pages to talk about this. But He created them from light. Most importantly, for the believers to see that, to know that the angels, for example, now, alhamdulillah, the Prophet said, there's no group who studied Islam or studied Quran, they've sit together, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send the angels to sit with them. And we talk about the angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of them, for example, if he hit his wing, if he hit the earth by his wing, he might flip it upside down. So imagine if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends this as a supporter. In terms of when you're in your exam, when you're in your life, when you have calamity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always sends the angels to support the believers, and they have their tasks. So imanu billahi wa malaikatihi, the angels, wa kutubihi, the holy books that were revealed on the prophets, and the Quran, wa kutubihi wa rusulihi, and believe in all the prophets that were mentioned in the Quran, and to believe that there are other prophets too that we don't know. Wal yawmil akhiri, to believe in the day of judgment. And 6, wal qadari, faith, if it's good or bad. A good day, we believe that a good day is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a bad day is, you might see it bad for a bigger good that's going to come in future. So these six things that makes us as a believer, and we have to have these as Muslims. Okay? Now, for example, each one you can talk specifically. Well, we talked about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can talk a little bit about the angels. You can talk about the prophets. Oh, you're a Christian. We believe in Jesus. We have actually a chapter that talks about that's titled Mary and talks about Mary. We believe in Moses. We believe in all the prophets. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends these prophets to deliver the message and fix the corruption, right? And when it comes to the holy books, we believe that the books that were revealed on the prophets, they were all right. They were all like same. They're like just Quran is the newer version of them, and like how the New Testament is a new version of the Old Testament. They all came with the same message: to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to do well and forbid the wrong. Right? Now, I might ask you this question, and this a lot of people they would ask. So then, why Islam as a message? Why we have Christianity and Judaism and other type of, we have like the Hanifiya, or like the people who follow Ibrahim alayhi salam. Why Islam? Why Islam didn't start from Ibrahim? Why Islam came with Prophet alayhi salam? Anyone?
It did come with Ibrahim alayhi salam.
Okay, but he would tell you it was not named Islam. Anyone knows the answer?
Would we say that the revelation they received was for the people of their time, and in Islam, and with the Quran, was sent for the people of that time and for the rest of the time?
Still, we tell you, like, why in the past there was a different religion than Islam.
I'll bring up an analogy and say it's the same way your phone comes out with updates every single year. It's the same way.
You're talking about update, but still, why not Islam? Not about the content, about the idea. So the thing is that Allah said, Inna ad-dina 'inda Allah al-Islam. That there's nothing called religions. There's only one religion. It is Islam. And Adam came with it. What is Islam? To worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So Adam came with it. Isa came with it. Musa came with it. All the prophets came with the same message, but the content was different. For example, why? Because time changes. At time of Yusuf alayhi salam, we all know the story. I mean, even what this was back till Adam, subhanAllah. When people prostrate to someone, that shows what? Respect. But we nowadays, we don't do that. This is haram in our Sharia because people at our times make this as a way of worship. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it haram for us and halal for them. Another thing, at the time of Adam, he's the first person, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a miracle in Hawa. She had more than one stomach, as the hadith said. Hawa, Eve, she had more than one stomach. So she can give birth to a lot of twins. And here in this Sharia, the brothers and sisters can marry because humanity needs to exist. However, in our Sharia, this is haram. So the content in terms of Sharia is different, but the message is the same. It's all Islam. Okay? So going back to the pillars of Islam or the pillars of Iman, you can talk on each one of them. Imanu billahi wa malaikatihi, believe in Allah and the angels and the books and the prophets and the day of judgment and faith, good and bad. You can mention a lot of stories about. There's a lot of them in Quran. So I would like you to go and research about the story of Al-Khudr and Musa alayhi salam in Surah Al-Kahf. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed Musa that there's something really bad, but it was for a much good thing in future because Allah is the most wise and He brings things that are better for His servants. Okay? So these are the pillars of Iman. The pillars of Islam, to believe in Allah and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. These both are one. So Muhammad is the final messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only the messenger, the messenger and the final one. Al-Imanu billahi, Shahadu an la ilaha Muhammad Rasulullah, Iqamu salat, performing prayer, Ita'u zakat, giving zakat, Sawmu Ramadan, fasting Ramadan, Hajjul Bayt, we said, Shahadu an la ilaha Muhammad Rasulullah, Iqamu salat, Ita'u zakat, Sawmu Ramadan, wa Hajjul Bayt. So, Iqamu salat, performing the prayer, Ita'u zakat, giving zakat, okay, fasting Ramadan, and Hajj al-Bayt, the pilgrimage. Liman istata, whoever. So what's the difference between Iman and Islam? As the sister said, Iman are things that are in the heart, that we believe. Islam are things that we have to translate. Now a person might tell you, come on, like I want to make things easy on me. Why I have to pray 5 times a day and give 2.5% of my wealth every year? If like 1 year pass on these, give it to the poor, or fast for 1 month, or what would be an answer for that? Like, why I have to do all these stuff? Like, I want to make things easier. Go ahead.
So the first thing is, don't think about all the hard stuff you do. First, you take that initial leap of faith because Shaitan is really trying to stop you from doing this now. And the thing is, you just eat the cake slice by slice. You shouldn't eat the whole entire cake or else you get sick. So don't think about that now, but get into it as you go and take these steps.
Exactly. Take it step by step. But when you are explaining, you tell him, wait a little bit until I explain these steps because they're easy. I mean, these 5 prayers, and you can, for example, when you start by, let's talk a little bit about the pillars of Islam. So we said, believe in Allah and the Prophet. What does that mean? That means whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet orders, if He orders things, we try our best. If it was a sunnah or something, to apply it. But it was one of these 5 things, it's a must. It's a duty. We try our best and take it as slice by slice, as you said, right? Don't like put a lot of effort on it. But tell him about the prayer. I mean, why do we pray? I mean, tell him that prayer and this style of prayer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it 5 times a day to match our psychology. as we are the people of the end of times? Because you need a helper. And tell him about the importance. Why do we say Allahu Akbar in our prayer as a routine thing? We do it every day, every day. Allahu Akbar, that means God is greater. That means that God is greater than your problems, or your routinely problems and hardship, whatever. So if I tell you now that you can have the mobile or the phone of the President of the United States, would you reject that? No. Like call him 5 times a day. You won't reject that. How about the kings of the kings? It's like you need the prayer. Tell him, I know it might be a new thing, but it's good. You'll have this spirituality. But the main answer for that is like why we why we have to do such just they're by the way, they're not that hard. Why we do? I bring them an example which is very relevant. You tell them first that Allah is a complete. Allah doesn't need that. Allah is testing us in this dunya. And by the way, it's very important to bring the idea of this dunya as a test. You go to UCSD, if you study, you're gonna succeed. If you don't study and you're lazy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just want this word. If you don't study, you're gonna fail. Right? So if you do well, and if you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll be in the safe side. If not, it's gonna be otherwise. But I bring them this thing. Bring to them this thing. It's like a lot of people here watched the famous animation movie Kung Fu Panda. Who did not watch it? I mean, when in the first was not a series, first movie, he wants like to be the dragon warrior or something, right? I mean, him is like a panda. He's very like he's not an athlete. He's not even like zero background, right? So his master takes him and teaches him, right, to be what? Strong, to be physically strong. When it comes to the Islam with these 5 pillars, it's the same thing. Allah is teaching us spiritually to be strong in this dunya, to be warriors in this dunya. Because this dunya as a test is not going to be easy. So when you do prayer, you stick to it 5 times in a day. That's why the Prophet Muhammad if something hit him hard, immediately go and pray, prostrate and make dua. This is where you can see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is helping you. That's why subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a lot of calamities to the Sahaba and to the Prophet ﷺ, the early stages in the seerah. Why? Because Allah, one of his names, Rabbul Alameen, the one who raised, he's raising you. He's making you strong in this dunya. He's making you powerful. So you do these stuff to be strong, to know how to like survive in this dunya. And you need these. And if you don't follow these, it's gonna be hard and tough. So we can talk about prayer. It's good to mention it a little bit. Ita'u zakat. How beautiful is it in Islam? There's a certain amount that the scholars, people who knows in economics, there's a line. For example, now here it's $5,000. If you have $5,000 in your pocket and 1 year passed after that, and it's still the same, or in your bank, you have to bring how much? 2.5%. Meaning in $100,000, how much is 2.5%? 2.5? 2,500. Compare it to the 100,000 in 10,000. $10,000, how much? 250. Imagine just $250. 2.5%. $250, you give it to a person who did not reach the limit. So let's say you're a millionaire, because alhamdulillah, the Muslims they have a lot of money. If this Muslim has a 100,000 and the other has a million, they both give zakat to a third person that doesn't have money. Just this 2.5% might help him to open a small business. The year after, all of them, they're gonna give zakat to a fourth or fifth, and that goes on. And subhanallah, if you talk about the Islamic economics, it's really beautiful, because sometimes if the government was hit with something hard, the internal system of zakat, if now all the Muslims paid their zakat, the 2.5%, there will be no poverty in the Muslim world. And even like we will flood with money. But this is unfortunate. The Muslims need a lot of, like, there's a big amount that they don't do. Sawm Ramadan, you can talk about fasting. And how good is it? How important is fasting in terms of bring all the people together, make you remind of the poor, right? Make you remember the poor, make you spend more money, or spend more money for food, like to feed people, right? And a lot of things about fasting. I don't want to make it too long. Hajjul Bayt is like when you go this journey, if you had the money, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where all the Muslims gathers, whether they're white, black, Arabs, non-Arabs, all of them, they go with their heart. You can't distinguish between them who's the upper class and the other who's the lower, from the lower class. And we're all like, it's humble, right? We all go together. There's a lot of other topics and the good way of giving da'wah. But wallahi, if you, with a smiley face, just said what we talked today to a person, that's enough for planting the seed. And that's enough, inshallah, planting the seed. And again, Allah doesn't see the result only. Allah sees mainly the effort. Because Nuh alayhi salam, for 150 years, we said only few people accepted Islam after that. Now, when you talk about all these stuff, he will have an understanding why Islam seems very special, and he doesn't have to go necessarily to go and read in all other religions, because it makes sense, right? And now every misconception, like why like women in Islam they wear hijab, it's gonna now, for a sister, she's gonna have your lens at least to start thinking about the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of making the hijab or commanding our sisters to wear the hijab, right? And a lot of other things, they would start to think from a mind and from a reference. That's very important. Because a lot of these people, they take the dunya as the reference. I mean, if you take your dunya as the reference, then everything haram becomes halal. I mean, why we don't do that? Come on, like we're all living together, whatever. But if you take the akhirah, the right reference, which is going to stay the eternity, the Jannah and An-Nar as a reference, things will start to make sense. That's why a lot of scholars who were non-Muslims, and even they were like carried a lot of hatred, they were Islamophobes. Why they accepted Islam? Because they said, we started to study Islam, and when we studied Islam, we started to understand what the Muslims think and what they believe in. So I think we approached an hour. Any question? I will try to answer. Any question?
When giving da'wah, is it, you mentioned when someone asks, why do we pray?
Mhm.
I remember there's a verse in the Quran, لا خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون.
وما خلقت الجن
وما خلقت الجن إلا ليعبدون. Is it better to then not go directly to what the Quran says, or like give more like the benefits of the salah?
For sure, it would tell you why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. Why I have to worship. I mean, you would tell him, look, you're worshiping him for your own sake. But I'd like to bring this example too. It's like, supposedly now I see Mahdi and I tell him, look, brother, I love you. I give you $2 billion. That's because I love him. He didn't do anything. It's the first time I see him. I mean, any random person will start worshiping me. Yeah. Now, if I tell Mahdi to choose between two things, the blessing of eyes for his sight, right? and this $2 billion, which one would you choose?
I see.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you this for free. And when you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you thank Him, and He's going to increase the blessings on you. And one important thing too is that Allah said in the Quran, and by the way, when it comes to ibadah, people, they limit the term ibadah just to what? Praying, fasting, the arkan, the pillars. No. When a Muslim, when he sleeps, it's a ibadah. When he smiles, it's a ibadah. Because when he sleeps, how is it ibadah? When he eats, it's a ibadah. When he sleeps, because he's sleeping
To wake up for Fajr.
to wake up for Fajr, he's sleeping and he did not do haram. Because people at night sometimes they lose their minds, right? When he eats the halal, which is the healthy and good for him. And he's obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every kind of step you take, when you seek knowledge, even if it's a dunya knowledge, take this as a student. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet said in Sahih Bukhari, whoever seeks a path of knowledge, من سلك طريقا يلتمس به علما سهل الله له طريقا الجنة. Allah will ease a way for him to Jannah. When you study, because why you're studying? Because you're studying, because inshallah you're going to earn the halal money. Because you're going to be a person who, part of this ummah that's going to help. Right? If you want to be a doctor, an engineer, whatever, eventually you're going to help people, help humanity. And this all comes in the act of ibadah. So وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا يَعْبُدُونَ. To finalize with this, is that why your parents brought you to this world, right? They decided to marry and brought you here. If they know there's a big possibility that you will be a disobeying son or daughter, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought you here? If there's a possibility. Because subhanAllah, there's this biological connection between us and our parents. That they work very hard, they do a lot of tough work just to make you happy and smiling. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's Lillahi al-Mathal al-A'la, I'm saying it's the same example. He brought us here because He wants us to worship Him and to have this kind of communication where He will achieve and bless us with rizq and good in this dunya and the akhirah. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair.